Good afternoon. In the unenviable position of talking to you right after a good lunch, Dr. Anthrop and I look forward to spending this next few minutes with you. My name is Preston Mehring. I'm a physician with Kaiser Permanente, have been for the last 42 years, and my clinical practice was in OBGYN, and it's also been clear to me throughout my career that good food matters. Disclaimer, I am not a researcher at all. I mean, I've done basically my role as a clinician over these years has been to try to take what I hear and learn from those that do great research and to try and figure out how to translate it into something that's functional and kind of operational on the front line for the average person. And so I take a lot of information and then see, well, what are we going to do with this information? What changes can we actually make based on what we learn? So Tracy Woodruff's group, great research, Program for Reproductive Health and the Environment at UC, gave me this slide. It's easy to read. 43 chemicals found in virtually every pregnant woman in the United States. These are chemicals from the usual sources, from the sprays you use on cockroaches at home, cosmetics, cleaning supplies in the house, what equipment people use to cook with, what they microwave food in. But one of the sources, too, of the chemicals in pregnant women in the country is what comes in the food that they eat. So we all have these chemicals. What do we know about whether or not it matters? I mean, clearly, all of us in the room, we've been eating in the United States, and many of you, it sounds like, in other countries as well, for a number of years. We all have a body burden of chemicals. Does it matter? Well, there's more and more research coming out and some good position statements by the American College of OBGYN and others about the adverse impact of industrial chemicals on future generations. There was talk in an earlier panel about the -9 to 0 time. Well, there's also talk from even in the first week of conception, after conception, of the impact on the internal environment for the mother on the future health of the baby in terms of, obesity, cancer, endocrine disruption of various problems in boys and girls. I'll leave all the details of the research to the researchers, but just know that what happens prenatally does have a big impact on the future. So what's the population eat? This is Kaiser Permanente data. It's 2002. The numbers have gone up just a little bit. But what you can see here in general is that on average, only about 15% of our members eat 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. And that mirrors the general population. And you can see here that less than 5% of young men in certain ethnic groups eat 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. And if people aren't eating fruits and vegetables, what is being consumed? Well, commonly it's food with O's in it, like Fritos and Doritos and Cheetos and Ho-Hos. I mean, that is what we eat as a population. Where's that food grown? Well, a lot of it is made from corn and soy, grown in the Midwest. And this is just a simple picture of the end result of that process. We learned this morning about the change in food subsidies and the encouragement for our farmers to grow lots and lots of corn. We heard about GMO corn and soy and other products and the impacts on health and the environment. Well, this is just the downstream picture of what happens in the Gulf of Mexico. This is your basic dead zone as seen from a satellite. So a lot of what we eat has this impact on the environment. We can only imagine what impact it actually has on our health. So we think, okay, I'll be safe if I eat vegetables. Well, here's one of the hardest public health messages that I struggle with when I'm talking to an audience. This is Salinas Valley, 220,000 acres of agriculture. Only 11,000 acres is farmed organically. Half of that is earthbound farms. And the Salinas Valley grows 85% of the salad greens eaten in America. And they're grown this way, where there's 5,000 pounds of organophosphate pesticides on every square mile. The Salinas River starts down by the plug off to the side, goes 156 miles up before it drains in Monterey Bay. At the origin of the river, there are birds and animals and frogs, and it's noisy. And by the time you get to the center of the river, Tyrone Hayes here out of UC talks about the fact that 99% of the tadpoles are hermaphrodites. It means that if you look at their ova, or their testes under a microscope, there are ova coming out of them. There are eggs coming out of them. Now, it's been 45 years since I did embryology, but I know that's not right. And by the time you get to the mouth of the river, it's Rachel Carson's Silent Spring all over again. There are no birds. There are no animals. There are no frogs. It is silent. And that's where 85% of the salad greens in America are grown. So clearly there's an impact on the environment of our, quotes, industrial food system. But it's not just an impact on the environment. Dr. Brenda Eskenazi out of one of your public health school, maternal child health, I don't know which section she's in, but she is, to me, she's a heroine. I mean, she has done fantastic work through her comprehensive health assessment of the mothers and children of Salinas. She took 600 kids born to farm workers, women, in the Salinas Valley, starting about 10 years ago, and tracked these children. But first she measured the organophosphate pesticide levels, metabolite levels, in the cord blood, in the maternal blood. She knew which farm workers, which women had more pesticide burden than others. She then tracked 600 kids. She still got 300 left. By age 2, she started seeing cognitive changes based on standardized tests that pediatricians know all about. By age 7, the same effects, the same cognitive deficits were more prevalent in the kids born to women with the highest pesticide burden. And not only that, their IQs were measured as 7 points less. Now, some people say, well, 7 points, what's 7 points? It's a pretty broad scale. If you changed the definition of mental retardation, if you moved it down 7 points, 3.5 more million Americans would be in that category. 7 points matters. What people, where they work, what they bring home on their clothes for their little kids to hug, all those things matter. So how does it play out? How do we translate that to how it plays out at a community level? Well, just for background, this is obviously the East Bay. The red zones, the darkest colors, are anywhere from 20 to 60% of families living below the poverty line. That's $22,000 for a family of 4, $18,000 for a family of 3. This is how many of our neighbors are living below that level. There was a lot of talk today about the cash transfer programs and income security and inequality, income inequality. Well, it's living and well right here in the East Bay and in any other community in America. Your zip code may matter as much as your genetic code. Your zip code may matter as much as your genetic code. Where you live absolutely makes a difference. And it makes a difference. I mean, what you can see is what follows the income. I mean, this map, you might as well lay it over the income map. And you can see these are obesity rates. These are now Kaiser Permanente members where the average BMI in the red zones, the average is 30. And it looks like the same map. And of course, diabetes tracks obesity. That's real clear. And just for impact purposes, to try and say, well, we saw about diabetes today with amputations. In general, if someone has type 2 diabetes, it is 2.3 times as expensive to take care of them for healthcare costs as somebody without diabetes. So what we've got is a whole population of folks who are challenged economically. Obesity seems to track that. Diabetes tracks that. And we know diabetes is a lot more expensive in terms of future healthcare costs. But we also know that there's the possibility to make a difference. The hard part is, how do we actually get that to happen? The Seventh-day Adventist Health Study looked at 70,000 people longitudinally. 50,000 women, 20,000 men. They're a pretty homogeneous group. Only 1% smoke, 6% use alcohol. And what they looked at, too, were all the dietary habits for the Seventh-day Adventist as a large group. And they found that those on the standard American diet had diabetes rates of 7.6%. I was fascinated by the 15% rate that we heard about this morning. That's the standard American diet. And the standard American diet is on the poster you see right outside the wall here, where there are the big DiGiorno pepperoni pizzas. There was nothing green in that picture. And there's a little, I don't know if you read it underneath, but Americans eat, that one said, 275 pounds of meat per person per year, per adult per year. I know the average is 185 pounds. That's a half a pound a day. That's 64 pounds of beef, 57 pounds of chicken, 50 pounds of pork, and the rest, turkey, lamb, other things. That's the average American, so that must include kids. But 275 pounds of meat per person per year, of stuff with lots of saturated fat, lots of calories, that's the standard American diet. That gives you the high diabetes rates, and that's what we see in a lot of our neighborhoods. But we also know that those that eat a mostly plant-based diet, now I don't mean going crazy with a solar panel on your head and pedaling your bike, to charge your computer and turning your head to the south to be sure that you get the exposure. I'm not talking about a raw vegan, but just a basic, mostly plant-based diet with less meat and less dairy can absolutely make a difference in where you go. So when I look at all the research, I think, okay, what is a fundamental message that we can begin to put out there? Well, that's one of the messages. Well, does this affect just diabetes? No, it also affects congestive heart failure readmission rates. Well, this map, East Oakland, West Oakland, Richmond, again, you can see that this map looks pretty much like the other one. Again, your zip code matters even for something like heart failure. But it makes sense. Heart failure is salt-related. Salt comes in packaged and processed foods. 70% of the sodium you get is from stuff with a barcode on it, or stuff that comes through your car window. So top ramen, Campbell's soup, fried chicken, pizza, Hungry Man dinners, you end up back in the hospital if you have congestive heart failure. Now, there is not an aberration, but another reason here, under the Walnut Creek asterisk there's Rossmore. That's a different factor. That's older folks. Older folks, too, get more congestive heart failure. So what's the real competition? There's always the talk with Kaiser Permanente of healthcare competition. Well, our real competition is right here. We heard Dr. Nessel talked about the funding this morning, $16 billion just for the ad agencies for advertising about bad food. Well, and a lot of that is aimed at children, and the funding, I'm sure, is even higher than that. But that's our real competition. I would doubt that our public health departments of funding is anywhere close to that. There was also some talk this morning, and this we hear often, that fast food is so cheap. And yes, there are the Happy Meals where you get a few apple slices and some other things. We often hear, well, it's cheap to eat fast food. Mark Bittman did I thought, an interesting article about 2 years ago now in the Sunday New York Times. He went to the McDonald's down the street from his office in Manhattan, and this is what it actually cost for a family of four. I mean, it was 3 burgers of different sizes, some nuggets, 4 different fries, some sodas, $27.89. He also had his next slide was about a roast chicken dinner for $13.79 with a baked potato and some salad. It was a very scrawny-looking chicken. You could have even gotten an organic big chicken where you'd have leftovers to toss with some farro, arugula, cherry tomatoes, and a Meyer lemon vinaigrette a few days later. But you know, even then, you'd be spending less to feed 4 people than you do to go to McDonald's. And why not rice and beans and other things to go with it? And I may not use the bacon these days because I'm old, but and I may make a good lentil soup. I mean, a black bean soup out of this with jalapenos and cilantro and cumin and maybe a serrano chili in there too, and some avocado on top and scallions and some whole wheat tortillas and a cold cerveza and a big salad, and you can feed. Outside the beer, you could feed a family of 4 very easily on $10, and it takes 20 minutes to make a black bean soup. So, you know, at some point, and Marion Nestle talked about personal responsibility, cooking more at home. I understand it takes time. But, you know, if you have an oven, if you're lucky enough to live in a house with an oven and you preheat it to 400 and you throw the chicken in and you cut a baked potato in half and throw that in the oven, and then you go take a walk for an hour with your kids or do homework with them or dance with your partner in the kitchen or listen to music or read a book, 1 hour later, dinner's basically done except for making a salad, and I can show you how to make a vinaigrette in about 3 minutes. That's what it takes to put together a dinner that is a lot cheaper than going out to a fast food restaurant. And you don't have to go wait in line and wait for your kid to get the special burger without the onions and all that other stuff. So to try and foster people and to make it easy, the right thing easy to do, the right thing being get some good fresh food to cook at home, we started the first hospital-based all-organic farmers market at Kaiser Oakland in 2003. It was like a block party out in front. A woman ran up to me and said, "How much longer is the market going to be open?" She was out of breath. And I said, "Well, at least another hour." "Oh, good. I've got to take my husband to the emergency room, and I'll be right back." It worked. We went from one farmer's market to 55. There are now farmers markets at maybe 50, 60 other healthcare organizations around the country. I'm not saying that the 7,000, 8,000 farmers markets in the country are the answer for our food supply. They aren't. They're, 3-4 months long in some parts of the country, and then people bemoan the fact that they're only 3 or 4 months long, and I look at it, well, let's celebrate it, and why not take the food from the local farmers and figure out how to freeze it so that they can grow extra in the summer, freeze it, and then eat frozen food that's locally grown and fresh in the wintertime. I don't know, but when you have farmers markets, celebrate them. And even if you don't have farmers markets, it's still possible. Instead of buying food with barcodes and packages that somebody else made in a factory, it is possible to buy fresh food. I mean, Michael Pollan, one of the quotes in his most recent book, Cooking, was basically the best diet you can have is one that you cook yourself. You can have all the French fries you want, you just have to make them. Okay, but basically, good fresh whole food that you make yourself actually matters. Fresh local food, particularly sustainably produced food, can make a difference. If you are, or you know someone, or someone you love, is a young woman in reproductive age, it is critically important, I believe, based on the data I read from real researchers like Tracy Woodruff and others, is real important to examine very carefully your diet and the diet of the populations that you're going to affect by all the work you do when you leave the university here and you go out and work out in the community. If we could focus on young women and have them go into a pregnancy, normal weight, reduced chemical burden, you would change the future of America, change the future of American healthcare costs. That's a good place to focus. And it's possible to do that. Good health begins here. To be able to take the good food that's around us, and even in the low-income neighborhoods, there are options. I mean, most of these folks have some opportunity to buy fresh food someplace. One of the biggest barriers, and this is totally anecdotal, but often I'll do a cooking demo at the end of a talk. The last 100 times I've done that, I've asked somebody out of the audience to come and cook with me. And we make like a black bean, corn, cherry tomato salad with a chili lime vinaigrette or something. But what I've watched in people that I've cooked with, and also in groups of 20 and 30, maybe 10% of Americans know how to use a chef's knife. Maybe 10% of Americans have sharpened their kitchen knife in the last month. That to me, too, is a real fundamental part of the battle. Sharpen your chef's knife, get a cutting board, get a salad spinner, practice mincing garlic, dicing an onion, learn how to deal with the jalapeno and bell peppers, and you can change your future. Thank you very much.